pivot point is a point in space about which an object or group of vertices, edges, faces is rotated or scaled. You may want to shift the pivot point to make it easier to manipulate an object. Blender provides a number of pivot point options. It is listed in pivot point drop-down box here. Active element. The active element can be an object, vertex, edge, or a face. The active element is the last one to be selected and will be shown in light orange color when it in object mode and white when it in edit mode. Whether active element is a pivot set to active, all transformations will occur related to the active element. I am in object mode. When in object mode, rotation and scaling happening around the origin of the active object. You can see the cube remains in same location. Here I am doing the selection again, with the monkey head is the last selected in the selection sequence. You can see the rotations happening around the origin of the monkey head. Changing to edit mode. Before I explain this in edit mode, you will use these three buttons frequently, which is located in the viewport editor header. Here I am selecting the vertex select tool to select the vertex. Selecting an edge select to select edges. Selecting a face select to select faces. When two vertices are selected, it is forming an edge. Forming a chord face when four edges connected by vertices. Using the active face as a pivot point in edit mode may seem complex, but all the possible transformations follow a few rules. The pivot point is always at the median of an active face. The transformation occurs by transformation of the vertices of the selected face. If an unselected face shares one or more vertices with a selected face, then the unselected one will get some degree of transformation too. When one single face is selected, it becomes automatically active. You can see that when it is transformed, its vertices move, with the consequence that any adjacent faces which shares one or more vertices with the active face is also transformed. Faces have their pivot point at the center, which is where the median of the vertices is. Edges have their pivot point on their middle, since this is always where the median of the edges. A single vertex has no dimension at all, so it cannot show any transformation, except translations, which is not affected by the pivot point. For faces, the transformations occurs around the center of the active face. Edges also keep the same behavior with their pivot point at their median. For vertex, pivot point resides in the active. All the vertices are transformed relative to it. Median point. The median point can be considered to be broadly similar to the concept of center of gravity. If we assume that every element, object, face, vertex, etc. of the selection has the same mass, the median point would sit at the point of equilibrium for the selection. In object mode, Blender only considers the object's origins when determining the median point. This can lead to some counterintuitive results. You can see the median point is between the object origins and can be nowhere near the object's mesh. In edit mode, the median point is determined by the part of the selections that has the most elements. For example, when there are two cubes with the equal number of vertices, the median point lies directly between the two cubes. However, if we subdivide one cube multiple times so that it has many more vertices, you can see that the median point has shifted to the origin with the most vertices. Individual origins. When the pivot point is set to individual origins, The origin of each object remains in place while the object rotates or scales around it. In the edit mode, when you rotate or scale the touching faces and edges, they are treated as a single element and retain the shape of a group. Each group is transformed independently around its median point. (3D cursor). The 3D cursor is the most intuitive of the pivot points. When the 3D cursor is selected as the active pivot point, simply position the 3D cursor and then do the required transformation. All rotation and scaling transformations will now be done related to the location of the 3D cursor. Notice that the center point has been ignored. Bounding box center. The bounding box center is a rectangular box that is wrapped as tightly as possible around the selection. It is oriented parallel to the world axis. In this mode, the pivot point lies at the center of the bounding box. In object mode, transformation takes place related to the location of the object's origin. When a single object is selected, the rotation takes place around its origin. When multiple objects are selected, the pivot point is calculated based on the bounding box of the selected objects. More precisely, the centers of all the objects are taken into account. Only origins. When this option is enabled, the transformation will change the positions of the object's origins, but will not affect the object itself. Thank you very much for watching our video. Please subscribe for more videos.